Marrow Hill, a desolate place shrouded in mystery, loomed over the village like a dark cloud. Its jagged silhouette cast eerie shadows against the twilight sky, and whispers of untold stories swept through the narrow streets. Atop the hill stood the house on Marrow Hill, a once magnificent Victorian mansion, now twisted and warped by the cruel hands of time. The house was a foreboding structure, with its peeling paint, cracked windows, and an iron gate adorned with rusted spikes. The locals avoided it like the plague, crossing themselves when they passed by its crumbling walls. The very mention of its name sent a shiver down the spines of even the bravest souls. Children dared each other to approach the gate, but none ever ventured beyond it. Rumors about the house on Marrow Hill were as old as the village itself. Some claimed it was haunted by the spirits of those who had met their untimely ends within its walls, while others whispered of a curse that plagued the entire hill. The villagers spoke of strange lights flickering in the windows, and the chilling cries of the damned echoing in the night. Years had passed since anyone had dared to set foot inside the mansion, leaving it to decay, abandoned and forgotten. That was, until the day the letter arrived. The parchment was old and fragile, the ink fading, but the message was clear. You are the last living descendant of the house on Marrow Hill. It is your duty to uncover the truth that lies within its shadowed halls. The recipient, an unsuspecting young man named Alexander, had no idea that his life was about to change forever. As he stared at the letter, a growing sense of unease crept over him, yet he couldn't ignore the pull of the unknown. With a heavy heart, Alexander packed his belongings and set off towards the village, determined to unravel the secrets hidden within the house on Marrow Hill. Little did he know, the shadows were waiting, eager to share their twisted tales. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the darkness within the house on Marrow Hill was ready to reveal itself. Alexander arrived in the village under the cover of night, the full moon casting a pale glow upon the cobblestone streets. As he made his way through the narrow alleys, the villagers' eyes followed him, their whispers barely audible above the howling wind. Who is that stranger? Does he not know of the curse? He's headed for the house on Marrow Hill. The weight of their stares hung heavily upon Alexander's shoulders, but he pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As he approached the base of Marrow Hill, the iron gate creaked open, beckoning him inside. The wind howled louder, as if the very air sought to keep him away from the sinister mansion. He hesitated for a moment, feeling the icy fingers of dread grip his heart. Shaking off his fear, Alexander took a deep breath and stepped onto the overgrown path that led to the house. The darkness seemed to close in around him, the moonlight providing little comfort as he made his way up the hill. Finally, the mansion loomed before him, its dark windows gazing down like lifeless eyes. Alexander hesitated once more, feeling the pressure of countless unseen eyes upon him. He took another deep breath, steeling himself, and approached the massive wooden door. As he reached for the tarnished brass knocker, a chilling whisper echoed through the air, making him pause. It was a voice, soft and barely audible, but laced with sorrow and despair. Alexander felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end, but he refused to turn back now. He lifted the knocker and let it fall, the resounding thud echoing through the house. As the door creaked open, a cold gust of wind escaped, carrying with it the scent of decay and a chorus of whispers. Swallowing his fear, Alexander stepped into the dark foyer, the door slamming shut behind him. The shadows danced on the walls, their whispers growing louder, as if welcoming him home. "Welcome, Alexander!" a voice hissed in his ear. "You have much to learn!" With the darkness closing in around him, Alexander knew he had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The house on Marrow Hill had claimed another soul, and the whispers in the dark would not be silenced until the truth was unveiled. As Alexander explored the house on Marrow Hill, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The whispers seemed to follow him from room to room, an ever-present reminder of the unseen presence lurking in the shadows. He ventured deeper into the mansion, marveling at the grandeur of its architecture, now obscured by layers of dust and decay. The once great ballroom was filled with cobwebs, the ornate chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling. The portraits lining the walls seemed to stare down at him, their eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and accusation. In the library, Alexander discovered a vast collection of ancient tomes, their their pages yellowed and brittle with age. As he browsed the shelves, a particular volume caught his eye. It was bound in weathered leather, with a simple title etched into the cover: The History of Marrow Hill. Curiosity piqued. He carefully opened the book, its spine creaking with disuse. The words within were faded but legible, revealing the dark history of the house and its inhabitants. It spoke of a family cursed by their insatiable quest for power and knowledge, turning to the forbidden arts in their pursuit of immortality. As Alexander read, a sense of unease washed over him, the shadows seeming to grow darker and more oppressive. The whispers intensified, urging him to uncover the dark secrets hidden within the pages. His fingers traced the words of an incantation, and as he spoke them aloud, the room around him seemed to shift. The whispers grew louder, forming a cacophony of voices that threatened to drive him mad. Alexander clamped his hands over his ears, but the voices only grew louder, drowning out all other sound. And then, without warning, the voices ceased. The room fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting like a veil. Alexander looked around in confusion, his heart pounding in his chest. But he was no longer in the library. He found himself standing in a hidden chamber, lit by flickering candles that cast eerie shadows upon the walls. In the center of the room stood an altar, upon which lay a collection of mysterious artifacts and an open book. The pages seemed to beckon him, inviting him to delve deeper into the forbidden knowledge that had ensnared his ancestors. As Alexander stood there, torn between curiosity and dread, the whispers returned, urging him to embrace his destiny. But with each step he took towards the dark truth, he felt himself slipping further into the shadows, drawn into a world from which there could be no escape. The house on Marrow Hill had claimed another victim, and the vanishing had begun. The hidden chamber had become Alexander's sanctuary, a place where he could decipher the secrets of Marrow Hill's dark past. As he pored over the ancient texts and explored the mysterious artifacts, he began to uncover the tragic history of his ancestors, a lineage stained by greed, ambition, and betrayal. The whispers, once a source of terror, now served as ghostly guides, leading Alexander through the labyrinth of his family's twisted legacy. They revealed the story of a powerful matriarch who had made a sinister pact in exchange for eternal life, damning her bloodline to a fate worse than death. The voices spoke of a curse, binding the spirits of the deceased to the house on Marrow Hill, their souls trapped within its decaying walls. They told of a hidden chamber, where a secret ritual had been performed, unleashing an unspeakable evil upon the world. As Alexander delved deeper into the shadows of the past, he began to realize that his own fate was intertwined with that of his ancestors. He was the last of the bloodline, the one who could either break the curse or succumb to it, sealing the fate of his family for all eternity. Determined to set things right, Alexander resolved to piece together the fragments of the past, seeking a way to free the tormented souls trapped within the house. He began to explore the mansion once more, guided by the whispers that echoed through the dark halls. In the attic, he discovered the remnants of a once grand nursery, now filled with broken toys and tattered remnants of a bygone era. As he sifted through the debris, he uncovered a hidden compartment containing a series of journals, their pages filled with the anguished words of his ancestors. Through their writings, Alexander came to know the pain and suffering that had plagued his family for generations, the dark secrets that had haunted them to their graves. As he read, the echoes of the past grew louder, a chorus of voices urging him to face the darkness and restore the house on Marrow Hill to its former glory. But the further he ventured into the shadows, the more he began to question whether he could truly break the curse that had consumed his family, or if he was destined to become another lost soul, a whisper in the dark, echoing through eternity. With a newfound determination, Alexander set out to explore the depths of the house on Marrow Hill, seeking answers to the curse that held his family in its icy grip. The whispers led him through the haunted corridors, where the spirits of his ancestors lingered, desperate for release from their eternal torment. As he walked, Alexander noticed the subtle changes in the atmosphere. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, and the whispers more urgent. He felt a presence, unseen but palpable, following him through the mansion, watching his every move. He came upon a hallway lined with portraits of his ancestors, their eyes filled with sorrow and regret. The whispers urged him to touch each frame, and as he did, he experienced a rush of memories, each one more harrowing than the last. One portrait depicted a stern-faced woman, her eyes cold and calculating. The whispers revealed her as the matriarch who had struck the dark bargain, sacrificing her family's future for her own twisted desires. As Alexander's hand brushed the frame, he felt a wave of bitterness and anger, followed by an overwhelming sadness. Another portrait showed a young man, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. The whispers told of his ill-fated attempt to break the curse, a venture that led to his untimely demise. Alexander could feel the crushing weight of failure and despair as he touched the portrait, the young man's anguish echoing through the haunted corridors. As he continued down the hallway, Alexander felt the burden of his family's tragic history settling upon his shoulders. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, urging him to confront the darkness that lay at the heart of the curse. In the dim light, he spotted a door at the end of the hallway, its surface etched with arcane symbols. The whispers guided him towards it, promising that the answers he sought lay just beyond the threshold. With trembling hands, Alexander turned the doorknob, the door creaking open to reveal a shadowy chamber shrouded in darkness. As he stepped inside, the whispers fell silent, and the presence that had been following him seemed to vanish. But as the door closed behind him, he realized that he was not alone. The haunted corridors of the house on Marrow Hill held more than just the echoes of the past, and Alexander was about to come face to face with the darkness that had claimed his ancestors, a darkness that now sought to claim him as well. The chamber was bathed in an eerie crimson light, casting unsettling shadows upon the walls. At the center of the room stood an altar draped in a blood-stained cloth, and atop it lay an open diary, bound in scarlet leather. The whispers urged Alexander to approach, to read the words that would unlock the secrets of the curse. With his heart pounding in his chest, he stepped forward and began to read the diary's contents. The crimson diary belonged to none other than the matriarch herself, the woman who had sealed her family's fate with her dark bargain. In its pages, she chronicled her descent into madness, her desperate search for eternal life, and the unspeakable atrocities she had committed in pursuit of her goal. As Alexander read, he felt a growing horror at the depths of depravity to which his ancestor had sunk. The words seemed to seep into his very soul, poisoning his thoughts and clouding his judgment. The whispers grew more insistent, urging him to continue reading, to learn the secret of breaking the curse. But as he delved deeper into the crimson diary, Alexander felt himself slipping further into the darkness, the line between past and present beginning to blur. At last he found the passage he sought, a ritual that promised to sever the bonds between the living and the dead, freeing the souls trapped within the house on Marrow Hill. The ritual required a sacrifice, a willing offering of one's own life force to break the cycle of torment. The whispers urged him to act, to perform the ritual and release his family from their eternal suffering. But Alexander hesitated, torn between his desire to save his ancestors and the growing fear that he, too, would become a victim of the curse. As he stood there, trembling with indecision, a cold laughter echoed through the chamber. The presence that had been stalking him through the haunted corridors had returned, and it reveled in his anguish. The darkness that had claimed the souls of his ancestors now sought to claim Alexander as well, and it would not be denied. With the crimson diary in hand, he faced a terrible choice: embrace the darkness and risk his own soul, or turn away and leave his family to their eternal torment. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker, and Alexander knew that time was running out. The fate of the house on Marrow Hill hung in the balance, and only he could decide its destiny. Alexander, his mind racing with fear and doubt, clutched the crimson diary tightly to his chest. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as the darkness in the chamber threatened to engulf him. He knew he had to make a decision, but the thought of sacrificing himself filled him with dread. As he stood there, paralyzed by indecision, he heard a new voice amidst the whispers, a soft, gentle voice, filled with love and compassion. It called to him, cutting through the cacophony of tormented souls and offering a glimmer of hope. "Alexander," the voice whispered, "do not give in to the darkness. You have the power to save us all." The voice belonged to his late mother, who had died when Alexander was just a child. She had tried to shield him from the curse, to protect him from the horrors that haunted their family. Now, her spirit reached out to him, offering guidance and strength in his darkest hour. With renewed determination, Alexander searched the crimson diary for an alternative, a way to break the curse without sacrificing himself to the darkness. He pored over the pages, desperately seeking any hint of hope as the shadows closed in around him. And then, he found it. A hidden passage, written in the margins of the diary, obscured by the matriarch's dark musings. It spoke of a forgotten ritual, one that could sever the ties between the living and the dead, releasing the trapped souls without the need for a sacrifice. But the ritual was not without risk, for it required the caster to face the darkness head-on, to confront the malevolent force that had consumed the house on Marrow Hill. The passage warned that only the pure of heart could hope to succeed, for those tainted by the darkness would be swallowed by it, their souls lost forever. With a desperate plea to his mother's spirit for guidance and protection, Alexander began to gather the necessary components for the ritual. The whispers grew louder, angrier, as the spirit sensed his defiance, but Alexander refused to be swayed. As he prepared for the final confrontation, he felt the comforting presence of his mother's spirit, her love and courage enveloping him like a protective embrace. With her strength to guide him, Alexander steeled himself to face the darkness, determined to break the curse and free the souls of his ancestors once and for all. The fate of the house on Marrow Hill hung in the balance, and as the shadows gathered for their final assault, Alexander knew that he would either emerge victorious or become another lost soul, a whisper in the darkness, forever bound to the haunted corridors. With the ritual components gathered, Alexander prepared to face the darkness in the heart of the house on Marrow Hill. He could feel the oppressive presence of the malevolent force growing stronger, as if sensing the threat he posed to its dominion over the trapped souls. As he began to recite the ancient incantations, the chamber shook with a primal fury, the shadows twisting and writhing in a desperate attempt to halt his progress. The whispers of his ancestors rose to a fevered pitch, their voices united in a chorus of encouragement and warning. Alexander continued the ritual, his voice steady and resolute, even as the darkness encroached upon him, threatening to swallow him whole. He could feel the malevolent force probing his mind, seeking any hint of weakness, any trace of doubt that it could exploit. In the midst of the turmoil, Alexander caught sight of an ornate mirror hanging on the chamber wall. The mirror's surface seemed to ripple and distort, as if it were a gateway to another realm. As he gazed into the ominous reflection, Alexander saw the true face of the darkness, a monstrous entity that had feasted upon the souls of his ancestors for generations. The creature's gaze bore into Alexander, promising unspeakable torment if he continued with the ritual. But Alexander refused to be intimidated, drawing upon the love and courage of his mother's spirit to bolster his resolve. With a final incantation, he unleashed the power of the ritual, a brilliant light that pierced the darkness, driving the monstrous entity back towards the mirror. The spirits of his ancestors, their bonds to the house on Marrow Hill weakened by the ritual, began to break free, their whispers becoming a triumphant chorus as they ascended towards the light. The malevolent force roared in rage and defiance, its grip on the trapped souls slipping away. As Alexander watched, the creature was dragged back into the mirror, the ominous reflection shattering into 1,000 shards, banishing the darkness once and for all. The chamber grew silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the last remnants of the curse faded away. Alexander, exhausted but victorious, knew that he had succeeded in breaking the chains that had bound his family for generations. As he left the now empty chamber, he felt the gentle touch of his mother's spirit, her love and pride enveloping him one last time before she too ascended into the light. The house on Marrow Hill, finally free of its haunted past, stood as a testament to the power of love and courage in the face of darkness, a monument to the sacrifices of those who had dared to confront the ominous reflection. With the darkness banished and the spirits of his ancestors finally at peace, Alexander set about restoring the house on Marrow Hill to its former glory. As he explored the now quiet halls and rooms, he felt a sense of calm and belonging, as if the house itself were grateful for his actions. One day, while moving a dusty old cabinet in the study, Alexander discovered a hidden door in the floor, concealed beneath the worn wooden planks. The door was adorned with strange symbols, reminiscent of those found on the chamber door where he had faced the darkness. Curiosity piqued, Alexander pried open the hidden door, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into the darkness below. With a lantern in hand, he ventured down the ancient steps, wondering what secrets the house on Marrow Hill still had to reveal. At the bottom of the staircase, he discovered a vast underground chamber, the walls lined with shelves that contained a treasure trove of arcane knowledge. The chamber appeared to be a secret library, a repository of forbidden lore that had been hidden away from the world. Alexander felt both awe and unease as he explored the hidden library, the weight of the knowledge surrounding him almost palpable. He realized that his ancestors, in their quest for power and immortality, had collected the darkest secrets of the world, many of which were now within his reach. As he examined the ancient tomes and scrolls, he discovered that some contained information on how to harness the energies he had unleashed during the ritual. With this knowledge, he could not only protect the house on Marrow Hill from future threats, but also use the power to help others, to become a force for good in a world beset by darkness. But Alexander also knew that such power came with great responsibility, and he remembered the tragic fate of his ancestors, who had been consumed by their own ambition and greed. He resolved to tread carefully, to use the knowledge he had gained wisely and cautiously, and to ensure that the darkness that had once plagued his family would never rise again. The door in the floor, once a symbol of his family's dark legacy, now represented a new beginning for Alexander and the house on Marrow Hill. With the wisdom of the past to guide him and the courage to face the unknown, he stepped into the future, determined to honor the sacrifices of his ancestors and create a legacy of hope and light in a world too often shrouded in shadows. Years passed, and Alexander dedicated himself to the study of the arcane knowledge he had discovered within the hidden library. As he delved deeper into the mysteries of the ancient tomes, he gained a profound understanding of the delicate balance between light and darkness, learning to wield the power he had once feared for the greater good. The house on Marrow Hill became a beacon of hope for the surrounding community, as Alexander used his newfound abilities to help those in need. Word of his benevolence and wisdom spread far and wide, drawing people from all corners of the world to seek his counsel and aid. Despite his newfound purpose, Alexander remained ever vigilant, mindful of the darkness that had once consumed his family. He knew that evil forces still lurked in the shadows, waiting for any sign of weakness, any opportunity to claim the house on Marrow Hill once more. To protect his home and those he cared for, Alexander established a silent vigil, a network of trusted individuals who would stand guard against the encroaching darkness. These loyal friends and allies, bound by their love for Alexander and their desire to see the world made safe, took turns keeping watch over the house, ensuring that no malevolent force could ever take root there again. As the years went by, the silent vigil grew in both size and influence, extending its reach beyond the borders of Marrow Hill to protect other communities threatened by the forces of darkness. Under Alexander's guidance, the vigil became a powerful force for good, a bulwark against the terrors that lurked in the shadows of the world. Alexander, now an elderly man, knew that his time was drawing near. He had dedicated his life to the pursuit of knowledge and the protection of those he loved, and he was proud of the legacy he would leave behind. He had transformed the house on Marrow Hill from a haunted, cursed place into a sanctuary of light and hope, a testament to the power of redemption and the triumph of good over evil. In his final days, Alexander gathered his closest friends and allies, the members of the Silent Vigil, to share his last words of wisdom and guidance. He reminded them of the importance of their mission, the responsibility they bore to maintain the balance between light and darkness. With a final smile, Alexander passed on, his spirit joining those of his ancestors in the realm beyond. The Silent Vigil, honoring their founders' wishes, continued their watchful protection of the house on Marrow Hill and beyond, ensuring that the darkness that had once plagued the world would never rise again. And so, the legacy of Alexander and the house on Marrow Hill lived on, a beacon of hope shining brightly in the night. Decades after Alexander's passing, the Silent Vigil remained a steadfast guardian of the house on Marrow Hill and the surrounding lands. Under the vigilant watch of its members, the house continued to be a sanctuary of hope and knowledge for all who sought refuge from the shadows. One fateful evening, a young member of the Silent Vigil named Amelia discovered a hidden door within the house that had gone unnoticed for years. The door was concealed behind an old tapestry depicting the history of the house on Marrow Hill and bore a faded inscription that warned of the dangers within. Driven by curiosity and a sense of duty, Amelia ventured beyond the door, finding herself in a long-forgotten room. The chamber was filled with artifacts and relics that had once belonged to Alexander's ancestors, the remnants of their dark and twisted legacy. As Amelia explored the forbidden room, she began to uncover clues to a hidden truth that had been buried for generations. Among the relics, she discovered a journal penned by Alexander himself, chronicling his fears that the darkness he had vanquished might one day return. In the journal, Alexander revealed that he had discovered a prophecy foretelling the return of the malevolent force that had plagued his family. He had taken every precaution to protect the house on Marrow Hill, but he knew that it was impossible to predict when or how the darkness might manifest again. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Amelia vowed to share her discovery with the other members of the Silent Vigil. Together, they would prepare for the return of the darkness and redouble their efforts to protect the legacy of Alexander and the house on Marrow Hill. The members of the Silent Vigil, now more determined than ever, intensified their watch, researching ancient tomes and employing arcane wards to fortify the house against the darkness. They understood that the battle between light and shadow was eternal, and that they must always be ready to face the unknown. As the years passed, the Silent Vigil continued its work, ensuring that the house on Marrow Hill remained a beacon of hope for generations to come. And while the darkness still lurked in the shadows, waiting for its chance to strike, it would find no easy prey in the brave souls who stood as guardians, ever watchful and ever vigilant. The Silent Vigil continued to thrive, and the members had become like family to one another. They lived in harmony, bound together by their shared duty to protect the house on Marrow Hill and honor Alexander's legacy. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the dark sky, a member of the Silent Vigil named Thomas was making his rounds through the house. As he walked the quiet, dimly lit halls, he felt an unexpected chill in the air and a growing sense of unease. As he turned a corner, Thomas was startled by the appearance of a ghostly figure standing before him. The apparition was a young woman, her ethereal form glowing softly in the darkness. She seemed familiar to Thomas, and as he stared at her, he realized that she bore a striking resemblance to the late Alexander. The ghostly woman spoke, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried a weight of sadness and urgency. She revealed herself to be Alexander's long-lost daughter, Isabella, who had perished tragically before the darkness had been banished from the house. Her spirit, unable to find peace, had remained bound to Marrow Hill, watching over her father's legacy from the shadows. Isabella warned Thomas of a new threat, a powerful entity that sought to exploit the lingering remnants of darkness that still clung to the house. This sinister force aimed to shatter the delicate balance between light and shadow, plunging the world into chaos. As the storm raged outside, Isabella urged the Silent Vigil to prepare for the coming battle. She shared the knowledge of ancient rituals and powerful wards that had been passed down through her family, hoping that the Vigil would be able to repel the encroaching darkness. With renewed purpose and determination, the members of the Silent Vigil rallied together to defend the house on Marrow Hill. They delved deeper into the arcane knowledge of the hidden library, refining their skills and preparing for the imminent confrontation. As the day of reckoning drew near, the Silent Vigil stood strong, their unwavering dedication to their sacred duty fueling their resolve. And as they faced the ghostly apparition of Isabella, they knew they were not alone in their fight. The spirits of Alexander and his ancestors, bound by their love for Marrow Hill and their desire to protect the world from darkness, would stand with them in their hour of need. Together, the living and the dead would unite to defend the legacy of the house on Marrow Hill, ensuring that the light would continue to shine brightly, even in the face of the most overwhelming darkness. With the guidance of Isabella's spirit and the combined knowledge of the Silent Vigil, the members worked tirelessly to reinforce the magical defenses of the house on Marrow Hill. They began to uncover long-forgotten secrets hidden within the ancient tomes, their preparations growing more intricate and effective with each passing day. One afternoon, as the Silent Vigil member, Olivia, delved into the depths of the hidden library, she stumbled upon a dusty, unassuming book that had been overlooked for years. As she opened its pages, she made an unsettling discovery. The book contained a detailed account of the rituals and ceremonies that Alexander's ancestors had used to summon the very darkness they had sought to control. Olivia realized that the malevolent force that had once tormented the house on Marrow Hill was not merely an external threat, but was, in fact, the result of the misguided ambitions of Alexander's own bloodline. The The knowledge that the darkness had originated from within the house filled her with dread, as she understood the implications of such a revelation. She shared her discovery with the other members of the Silent Vigil, who were equally shaken by the truth. They now faced not only the responsibility of defending the house against the impending darkness, but also the burden of rectifying the sins of the past. With renewed determination and a deep sense of responsibility, the Silent Vigil members set about purifying the tainted legacy of the house on Marrow Hill. They resolved to destroy the dangerous knowledge that had birthed the darkness, ensuring that it would never again fall into the wrong hands. As they cleansed the house of the remnants of its dark past, they felt the balance between light and shadow begin to stabilize. The house itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if finally liberated from a long-held burden. However, the approaching threat still loomed large, and the Silent Vigil knew that their greatest challenge lay ahead. United by their shared purpose and the love for the house on Marrow Hill, they prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of their sanctuary and the balance between light and darkness. As the day of reckoning approached, the members of the Silent Vigil stood resolute, armed with the knowledge and power they had gained from their studies, and the support of Isabella and the spirits of the past. They were ready to confront the darkness, to defend the legacy of Alexander and the house on Marrow Hill, and to ensure that the light would continue to shine, even in the face of the most daunting adversity. As the day of the impending confrontation drew closer, the members of the Silent Vigil realized that they needed to harness every resource at their disposal to face the sinister force threatening the house on Marrow Hill. They decided to hold a seance, hoping to gain insight and guidance from the spirits that lingered within the house. Under the watchful gaze of Isabella, the members of the Silent Vigil gathered in the dimly lit parlor, forming a circle around a small wooden table. They joined hands, their hearts beating in unison as they prepared to pierce the veil between the living and the dead. With a deep breath, they began to chant, their voices harmonizing as they called upon the spirits of Alexander and his ancestors. The air grew heavy with anticipation, the room growing colder as the presence of the spirits drew near. As the seance reached its peak, a ghostly light filled the room, and the spirits of Alexander and his ancestors materialized before the Silent Vigil. Their spectral forms shimmered with an otherworldly glow, their expressions solemn yet determined. Alexander spoke first, his voice echoing through the chamber as he commended the members of the Silent Vigil for their unwavering dedication to preserving the balance between light and darkness. He shared with them his wisdom and experience, offering guidance and support as they prepared for the battle ahead. The spirits of the ancestors, too, offered their aid, revealing ancient secrets and techniques that had been lost to the passage of time. They spoke of the need for unity and strength in the face of adversity, emphasizing the importance of trust and communication as they faced the encroaching darkness. With their newfound knowledge and the support of the spirits, the members of the Silent Vigil felt more prepared than ever to face the approaching threat. They knew that the battle would be challenging, but they also understood that they had the power to overcome the darkness, just as Alexander had done years before. As the seance came to an end, the spirits of Alexander and his ancestors faded into the shadows, leaving the Silent Vigil with a sense of hope and determination. They knew that they would not face the darkness alone, and with the spirits of the past by their side, they were ready to fight for the legacy of the house on Marrow Hill and the balance between light and darkness. Together, they stood on the brink of the most crucial battle of their lives, ready to confront the darkness and ensure that the light of hope would continue to shine brightly in the world. In the days leading up to the confrontation, the Silent Vigil worked tirelessly to strengthen their defenses and unravel the origins of the malevolent force. As they studied the ancient tomes, they uncovered a sinister pact forged between Alexander's ancestors and the dark entity they had unwittingly unleashed upon the world. The pact had been a desperate attempt to secure power and influence by invoking the dark entity's aid. However, the ancestors had not understood the true nature of the force they had summoned, and in their hubris, they had sown the seeds of their own destruction. Realizing that the Silent Vigil's actions had weakened the pact's hold on the house on Marrow Hill, the dark entity had returned to reclaim its dominion, intent on using the house as a foothold to spread darkness and chaos throughout the world. Armed with this knowledge, the members of the Silent Vigil knew that they must find a way to sever the sinister pact once and for all, or risk losing everything they had fought so hard to protect. As the storm clouds gathered on the horizon, the members of the silent vigil prepared for the coming battle, their resolve tempered by the knowledge of the high stakes. They knew that they must not only defeat the dark entity, but also find a way to break the bonds of the sinister pact that had bound the house on Marrow Hill to darkness for generations. With the guidance of Isabella and the spirits of Alexander and his ancestors, they delved into the arcane arts, seeking a ritual that would allow them to break the pact and banish the dark entity from their world. In the heart of the storm, they gathered in the house's central chamber, forming a circle of light as they performed the ancient ritual. As they chanted in unison, the energy in the room intensified, swirling around them like a living force. The dark entity, sensing the threat to its power, manifested in the chamber, a swirling mass of shadow and malevolence. The silent vigil stood their ground, their hearts filled with courage and determination as they continued the ritual, the light from their circle pushing back against the darkness. With a final, desperate cry, the dark entity lashed out, seeking to shatter the circle and claim the house for its own. But the members of the silent vigil, united in their purpose and strengthened by the spirits of the past, held firm, their light burning brighter than ever before. As the ritual reached its climax, the sinister pact was shattered, the bonds of darkness that had held the house on Marrow Hill for generations dissolving in a brilliant flash of light. The dark entity, now weakened and vulnerable, was banished back to the shadows, its power over the house broken. The silent vigil, their battle won, and the legacy of the house on Marrow Hill secured, breathed a collective sigh of relief. The darkness had been defeated, and the house was finally free from the sinister pact that had plagued it for so long. With the guidance of Isabella and the spirits of Alexander and his ancestors, the silent vigil continued their mission to protect the world from the forces of darkness. The house on Marrow Hill, now a beacon of hope and light, would stand as a testament to their courage and the power of unity in the face of overwhelming adversity. In the aftermath of the battle against the dark entity, the members of the silent vigil set about rebuilding and restoring the house on Marrow Hill. Their victory had come at a great cost, but they were determined to ensure that the sacrifices made would not be in vain. As the house slowly returned to its former glory, whispers of the silent vigil's triumph began to spread throughout the land, inspiring hope in those who had long lived in fear of the darkness. The house on Marrow Hill became a sanctuary for those seeking refuge, a place where the light would always hold dominion over the shadows. However, the members of the silent vigil knew that their victory was not the end of their struggle. The forces of darkness, though weakened, would continue to gather strength and plot their return. They understood that their mission was an ongoing one, and they would need to remain vigilant in order to protect the balance between light and shadow. As time passed, the silent vigil continued to grow, attracting new members who were inspired by the tales of their bravery and dedication. They trained tirelessly, honing their skills and expanding their knowledge of the arcane arts in order to face the ever-evolving threats that loomed on the horizon. In the final hour, as the sun dipped below the horizon and twilight gave way to night, the members of the silent vigil would stand together on the grounds of the house on Marrow Hill, their eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of encroaching evil. They understood that the battle against the darkness was eternal, but they also knew that they were not alone in their fight. The spirits of Isabella, Alexander, and his ancestors remained with them, providing guidance and support from beyond the veil. Together, the living and the dead stood as guardians of the house on Marrow Hill, a symbol of hope and unity in the face of the ever-present darkness. They knew that, as long as they remained steadfast in their mission, the light would never falter, and the world would never fall to the shadows that sought to consume it. The house on Marrow Hill, once a place of sorrow and darkness, had become a beacon of light, standing as a testament to the power of hope, unity, and the unwavering courage of the silent vigil. And as the final hour passed and a new day dawned, the light of hope shone brighter than ever before, a constant reminder that even in the darkest of times, there would always be those who would stand against the shadows. Years passed, and the silent vigil continued to safeguard the house on Marrow Hill and the world from the forces of darkness. Their reputation grew, and their ranks swelled with new members from all corners of the land, each one united by a common purpose and a dedication to the preservation of the balance between light and shadow. Despite their many successes, the members of the silent vigil knew that the darkness would never truly be vanquished. They understood that the forces they battled against were eternal, and that there would always be those who sought to tip the balance in favor of chaos and destruction. One fateful day, a new threat emerged, more powerful and insidious than any they had faced before. The darkness had bided its time, gathering strength and forging alliances with those who had been seduced by the promise of power and dominion over the world. As the forces of darkness coalesced, a great shadow fell over the land, heralding the arrival of a terrible reckoning. The silent vigil, sensing the magnitude of the threat, called upon the spirits of Isabella, Alexander, and their ancestors for guidance and strength as they prepared to face their greatest challenge yet. The battle that followed would be long and brutal, a true test of the silent vigil's resolve and unity. But they faced the darkness with courage and determination, their hearts filled with the knowledge that they were the last line of defense between the world and the abyss. As the conflict raged, the house on Marrow Hill became a focal point for the forces of light and darkness, a battleground upon which the fate of the world would be decided. With each victory, the silent vigil pushed the darkness back, inch by inch, refusing to yield in the face of overwhelming adversity. Finally, in a climactic confrontation, the silent vigil faced the embodiment of the darkness itself, a monstrous entity of unimaginable power. The battle was fierce, and the cost was high, but the silent vigil stood strong, their unwavering dedication to the light driving them forward. With a final desperate effort, the silent vigil channeled the power of their unity, the spirits of Isabella, Alexander, and their ancestors, and the collective hope of the world into a single devastating blow, shattering the darkness and banishing the monstrous entity back to the shadows from whence it came. The battle was won, but the silent vigil knew that the darkness would never be truly defeated. The world would always need guardians to stand against the shadows and protect the delicate balance between light and darkness. With the house on Marrow Hill now a symbol of hope and perseverance, the silent vigil continued their mission, ever vigilant, ever watchful. For they knew that the day would come when the darkness would rise again, and when it did, they would be ready to stand against it, united in purpose and unyielding in their determination to protect the world from the ever-present threat of the shadows. As the years turned into decades, the silent vigil continued to protect the house on Marrow Hill and the world beyond from the forces of darkness. Their numbers grew, and their strength and resolve remained unyielding, a shining beacon of hope in a world that would never be truly free of the shadows. Though the darkness had been pushed back, it had not been defeated. It bided its time, waiting for an opportunity to strike, its insidious tendrils seeping into the hearts and minds of those susceptible to its seductive whispers. In the depths of the shadows, the remnants of the dark entity that had once sought to claim the house on Marrow Hill stirred, a faint glimmer of malevolence that refused to be extinguished. It plotted and schemed, searching for a way to regain its lost power and return to the world once more. As the silent vigil grew stronger, so too did the darkness, its influence reaching out to those who had been touched by the shadow's embrace. Its agents moved through the world like a poison, sowing chaos and discord in their wake, setting the stage for the dark entity's return. The silent vigil, ever vigilant, recognized the signs of the gathering storm and braced themselves for the battle to come. They knew that they would once again be called upon to stand against the darkness, to protect the world from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. The house on Marrow Hill, once a place of terror and despair, now stood as a testament to the power of hope and the indomitable spirit of those who refused to yield to the darkness. Its walls held the memories of past battles and the spirits of those who had fought to defend it, their legacy an unbreakable bond that bound the silent vigil together. In the end, the battle between light and darkness would continue, an eternal struggle that spanned the ages. But as long as there were those willing to stand against the shadows, the light would never be extinguished, and the world would never fall to the darkness. The silent vigil, united in purpose and strengthened by the spirits of Isabella, Alexander, and their ancestors, would continue to stand as guardians of the house on Marrow Hill and the world beyond. For in the face of the darkness, they knew that it was only through hope, unity, and the courage to stand against the shadows that the world could be saved from the shadow's embrace.